It's the Brad and John Show.
It is the Brad and John Show. It's what is today? Tuesday, 18th of November? Is that what it is, John?
It is, Brad.
Tuesday, 18th of November. Okay, and what do we do in the B block?
It's time for Brad's Top
It's time
3.
for Brad's Top 3.
It is. And the ladies are so good, they don't want to do it once. They want to do it how many times? Twice. And we start off with,
It's number 3.
John, do you know who Larry Summers is?
It sounds familiar. Yeah. Was he some sort of a White House character?
Larry Summers is, he's still on the faculty of Harvard, but for a while he was the chancellor of Harvard. And
Okay.
Larry Summers' name has come out in the Epstein tapes or files, whatever it was. Have you heard this story? It's actually kind of bizarre.
No, what was he doing there?
Well, the interesting part of this is that all this stuff, I'm thinking, here's the interesting thing. This is a perfect example of, I do networking. I'm in a network group, the Friday network group, and I'm in, chambers of commerce and things like that. It's not what you know, it's who you know. You know what I'm saying? So Larry Summers, who is this high-profile Harvard educator, used to be the chancellor of Harvard, he had a personal problem with a mentee, as they say in the article, apparently a female who he was mentoring, I guess in more ways than one, and he was having some issues with his relationship with his mentee. So who did he consult to see how he could strengthen his relationship with his mentee?
Oh, was it Jeffrey Epstein?
Yes, there's all these emails going back and forth between the dude at Harvard, who once upon a time was the president or chancellor, whatever he was. He was the HMFIC, is that what is it?
And MF are in charge.
Yeah. Right, and he was using Jeffrey Epstein as his dating coach. Now, think about that for a minute, John. That would be sort of like me calling the guy from Arch Apparel and saying, hey, I want to open some T-shirt stores. Can you give me some advice? You know what I'm saying, John?
Yeah. I mean, couldn't you make the argument, though, that Epstein would be able to give him advice about young women in uncomfortable situations? Like, you get what I'm saying?
I always find it interesting that you see these. I mean, let's be honest. We're all human beings, okay? And some of us are higher profile than others, but we all have essentially the same problems in life, okay? And what's interesting about this is, have you ever read the book Think and Grow Rich?
No, but you've Dedham Tots, Brad. And, he talks a lot about sublimation and other things like that. You've gone into excruciating detail before, but what was your point? It's Napoleon Hill, right?
Well, the interesting part of it was that essentially that men are controlled by one thing, and the one thing is women. That's what men are controlled by. Men are controlled by women. And
they're not controlled by women, the desire for women.
Well, whatever. I mean, whatever the situation is.
Yeah. I mean, there's a difference there, but go ahead.
Right. Okay.
Women don't control men, but men's desire to get what women have and access to women.
No, I disagree with you.
You're saying controls them.
I think men do control women. I have a friend of mine right now.
You mean women control men?
Yes, women control men. Women control men.
Yeah, in your case, that's absolutely true. As a noted simp and beta male, that's absolutely true.
Thank you, Zon. Appreciate that. I have a couple examples of this, which I won't go into right now. But the Larry Summers thing is to the point where, this Epstein guy, what in the world? See, what he screwed up, okay? He screwed up, and maybe he was ahead of the curve. He should have been doing like a YouTube channel. You know what I mean? That's what he should have been doing. He shouldn't have been, right?
Yeah.
I'm serious. He would be the advice columnist. It's to the point where I always compliment other radio stations. Z1077 here in St. Louis, KSLZ. I think they still run Jubal in the morning. You ever listen to Jubal, Jubal?
I listen to it every time I'm in the car in the morning with my kids. They do Can You Beat Victoria? And Brad, they also do a number of dating things, which is what you're referencing.
The second date updates are hilarious, John. Aren't they funny as all get out?
Yeah, I don't listen to them because I don't.
Oh, you don't want to have your kids.
I don't need help in that realm. But if you were to laugh at other people, yeah, of course.
Well, because what's interesting is most of them, if you don't know what we're talking about, the people call the radio station, and if they have a bad first date, they call, or no, if they have a good first date, but then they get ghosted, they call, can you find out why this person, and it's almost always a dude who has a date with a woman, and then he can't get her to respond to his phone calls.
Yeah, the guy can't take a hint, in other words. So he's going to be a nuisance and demand that she give him an answer.
Right.
When in reality, she's just not into him and he should cut his losses.
But no,
that's how men are.
Almost 90% of them, when they call the woman, it turns out the guy did bizarre, weird things. You know what I mean? On a first date, bizarre, weird things. There was one, sometimes I listen to these, they're all over YouTube, and there was a guy that he's calling, I had this great date with this woman, and now she's ghosting me. And he says, we had a great time. So they call her, and the story is they had a great time. And then he says, hey, come over to my place. I'm going to show you my collection of campaign buttons. So she thinks, yeah, that's an excuse. So he takes her to his place, and what does he show her? His collection of campaign buttons. And
wow.
he can't figure out why she's just sort of turned off, and it's just sort of weird. See, so Larry Summers, I mean, here's this dude. He's a brilliant guy. He's got a PhD. He ran Harvard, and he's got to call Jeffrey Epstein for dating advice? How sad is that, John? How sad is that?
Pretty sad. Pretty sad, Brad.
You ready for number 2?
Yeah, let's do it.
It's time for Brad's number 2. It's time for Brad's number 2.
This is a perfect example of the problem with people and their businesses. There's an article about the defunct Brett Hull restaurant in Wentzville. Okay, here's the problem. I know the Westplex pretty well. I had no idea Brett Hull had a restaurant in Westplex. Did you know that, John?
No idea. Did it used to be something else?
No, it's called, let me read the story. Let me pull this up a minute. Because I'm thinking to myself, I have no idea where this is. And they show a picture of the restaurant, and it looks like and one of the problems is there's complications with it because it's a big building. It's like 30,000 square feet, and there's a gym that's leasing part of the building. Let me see if I can find this real quick. Yeah, okay. The restaurant was called Brett Hull's Junction House, and it's looks like a fairly new building, really cool looking building, and there's a big, matter of fact, the headline is, now shuttered, Brett Hull's Junction House restaurant building up for sale amid legal fight. The asking price for the building on 1.2 acres, including the vacant but turnkey former Junction House space, is $4.2 million, according to the brochure. I had never even heard of this place. And it opened like I think it said it opened in 2020.
Yeah, I have it in front of me now. It opened in 2020, yeah.
Yeah, and
so I guess there's an entrepreneur and owner. So you know way more about this than I do, Brad. Like Brett Hull is not designing the menu. Somebody goes to him and says, hey, can I use your name? And you get a cut of the money.
Right. The Pasta House company used to do this with Ozzie Smith. If you remember going, matter of fact, my oldest son, we took him for his birthday at Ozzie Smith's restaurant at Westport. And that was actually run by the Pasta House company. Yeah. And it's a deal. They sign a deal. It's like, it's like a endorsement kind of deal or something like that. I don't know if they get a cut off the bottom, the top or something like that. But I found it interesting that I'm a guy that spends most of my time in St. Charles County, and I had no idea. And once again, I'm involved with networking groups and things like that. I've eaten a gazillion restaurants in St. Charles County, never even heard of the place. So you know what the problem with Brett Hull's restaurant is? Or was?
Yeah, they didn't advertise on Westplex 107.1.
Exactly, John. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Okay, ready for number 1?
Yeah, I want to hear it, Brad.
And now, Big Finish, Brad's number.
I found this fascinating. I don't know if you saw this on the national news. This story that I think it was in the New York Post on the crazy stuff with the would-be Trump assassin, the guy from Butler, Pennsylvania that shot.
Yeah, he's like you, Brad. You guys are in the same furry club, right?
Well, remember,
isn't that his thing, or was he a trans, or what was his thing?
I had to clear my voice. Okay, remember how? Hold on, just a minute. I think that's my gallbladder backing up into my throat. Okay, do you know how we know every single thing about Lee Harvey Oswald? And
yeah, but there's some assassins we don't know much about, Brad. Why is that?
Well, what's interesting about this is, according to this article in New York Post, he used to be a Trump fanboy. He was a big supporter of Trump. And the crazy thing about this is, remember, this is when Christopher Wray was still with the FBI. And I think this happened in July of God, it's not that long ago, a little, a year and a half ago, or a year and 3 months ago, in July of 2024. And a month later, they had Christopher Wray on Capitol Hill testifying, we found out everything we need to know about him, and he had no connections with anybody, and he was a loner. Turns out that's not the case at all. He had all sorts of crazy, weird connections, and he was and matter of fact, when I read the story, he was posting on, here's the interesting thing, he was posting on like 10 different social media sites. He was on Discord, he was on this, he was on that, he was, had a Facebook account, some of them in his own name. But the interesting part of it was that, and the article reached into the fact that there were several users that reported him repeatedly because he would make comments about he wanted to kill so-and-so, he wanted to murder this person, he wanted to shoot this person, blah, 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 blah. And nobody ever took anything down until the day after he shot President Trump. Now, let's be honest, it was overshadowed by the fact that he shot at Trump and hit him in the ear, but he killed one man and severely injured two other men. Wouldn't you think they would do like the deep dive on this dude? But instead, he's a loner, he lived with his parents, and there's nothing. Hey, move along, there's nothing to see here. You know what I'm saying, John?
Yeah, I guess it depends on who the they is. So don't you think there's a lot of information about this person that they're choosing to not release?
Well, that's sort of my point. And the point is that let's do the Tony Colombo flip test. If this had been an assassin who took a shot at then President Joe Biden, don't you think that the press would be tearing this guy's life apart? They would be camping out on his front lawn. They would be going through his parents' trash cans. They would be going and talking to his first grade and second grade and third grade teachers.
They would find a way to blame Donald Trump and Christian nationalism.
Right, exactly. They would blame Charlie Kirk. They would blame Matt Walsh. They would blame everybody in the conservative world. Oh my God, he's this guy. He's been demonized by the right. But yet the press just doesn't seem to have much interest. And don't you find it interesting that the paper that gets this is the New York Post? And if you know anything about the leanings of the paper, let's take the New York Times. John, how far to the left is the New York Times?
So far left, they've left America.
Yes. And the New York Post, not being a super conservative paper, but it's not a left-leaning paper. Would you consider it sort of like centrist?
I would agree with you. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I would say that the New York Post covers a lot of I don't want to say memes, stories that are popular on the right because you're not going to see them in the New York Times or the Washington Post. So that leaves a space for the New York Post to come in and write factual stories.
Right. And you know the interesting history of the New York Post?
I don't.
The longest-running newspaper in the country.
Oh, wow.
It's been
I did not know that. I thought that was the Thrifty Nickel. No. I thought that was Dan Barger's Suburban Journals, the North County Journal to be exact.
No.
Brad, if we're done with story number one right now, I was thinking the other day about the Suburban Journals. Do you know what happened to them? So they were owned by the Post-Dispatch, and then the Post just canceled them or discontinued them, 15, 20 years ago?
I can tell you the whole story behind it because of the fact that I knew it very well because I had a friend of mine that worked for Suburban Journals.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The problem they ran into was that their guarantee was that they put a newspaper in everybody's front lawn, okay? And the problem they ran into as their expenses got more and more and more, the cost of printing and stuff like that kept getting higher. And the problem was, as the St. Louis metro area expanded into St. Charles County, into West County, it became more and more expensive for them to put a paper on everybody's front lawn because it used to be.
Okay, I get that. I'm following you.
If you go back like 40 or 50 years ago, like in North County, you could do North County and you could do St. Charles. And if you did St. Charles, you just literally pretty much do St. Charles City and you were pretty much done. You know what I mean?
But with the western expansion, what you're saying is
right.
They would have to start going out to Darden Prairie and the houses are further apart, etc.
It's even like in Chesterfield and Wildwood. They'd have to go way out. In Jefferson County, they'd have to go way down south of Arnold and things like that. And even
then why didn't they just say, okay, we're going to only do the West County Journal once a week, and we'll keep doing the North County Journal twice a week?
I think that it just got to the point where, and you're right, it was not owned by the Post-Dispatch all along. There were a couple different companies that owned it. Matter of fact, it's funny, a lot of the people that I knew that were my generation that were in journalism, their first jobs were with the
I believe it. And what folks wouldn't understand today is if you're for example, a high school athlete in 2025, this sounds preposterous, but there was no internet in 1995. So if you wanted to know what your crosstown rival did at the Saturday morning football game, you had to read the Suburban Journal sports page to see the stats.
John, rarely do I correct you on something, but you just said there was no internet in 1995. Keep in mind.
There was internet, and Brad, you were on the internet. You created your first website in the early 90s. Matter of fact, once again, you're never going to believe this, but I started my first website, and people say, there's no internet in 1992. I said, oh, yeah, there it is. Anyway, most people did not have internet in their homes in 1995.
I put my first website up for the traffic
Yeah,
reporting
we
in
know, Brad. You were a pioneer. You told everybody about TikTok, too. The point is, people didn't have internet widely in their house in 1995.
Well, but the point was, and I think to a certain extent, the Post-Dispatch did buy them, okay? I think it was one of the classic examples of a successful company at the time, that was the Post-Dispatch, who bought their competitor and buried them. I think that's what it really came down to. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they did that intentionally, you think?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because of the fact when they had the big celebration for the 25-year anniversary of 97.1, John Beck told the story, and I think a lot of people have forgotten this, that Emmis at the time bought 97.1 because of the fact that at the time 97.1 was mounting a very successful campaign to get Casey listeners, and Emmis owned Casey. That was their bread and butter. They made tons of money off of Casey.
So they made a good business decision to purchase a competitor.
Right. They bought 97.1, which was called The Rock 97.1, and they killed the format. And that was sort of the interesting part of it, was they took it from being this very successful rock and roll station, which was, and at the time didn't have a very good signal. It had some signal problems.
Yeah, that's technical. So they wanted to get people over to they wanted to keep people on KC, so they bought the competitive radio station to force people back to KC.
And then they killed it, and they put for a while they ran what was called Red for a while, which was like they called it martini music, which is like Frank Sinatra kind of stuff. And then it went female talk, which was laid an egg and the whole bit. So yeah, I think I'm going to research that.
I mean, it wouldn't make sense for the Post to buy a successful newspaper and then kill the advertising revenue, though, right?
Yeah, but here's what they probably did. They went to the advertisers and said, "Hey, we know you're buying ads on us. We know you're buying ads at the Suburban Journal. But you know what? If you give us 30% of that Suburban Journal business, we'll just roll it into the Post and we'll double your ad size." So essentially, what came down to is it didn't cost them anything to kill the competition because they own the competition.
I see what you're saying, Brad. Well, that sounds pretty smart.
Well,
and then there were probably a bunch of hobos that sat around and said, "This is the death of local journalism. I'm going to get on my 1990s radio station and complain about it. Consolidation in the market's bad. Pretty soon, you're going to be able to drive all the way from St. Louis. I'll tell you what, you drive straight to Denver. It's flat. Have I ever told you that story, John? Yes. You can hear the same religious programming on every station."
Well, and that and Ryan Seacrest is what you hear on every station.
Yeah, that's true. There you go. It's Mick Radio. My favorite person in radio taught me that, Brad.
John, you know what? You're always so complimentary of me.
Thank you, Brad.
You know what I need to do?
What's that? You need to play Jam Fob.
I was going to do this one more time.
I kid Brad a lot about how I think AI sucks. But lately, Brad is killing it with AI. It's gotten so good that I can't tell a real person.
Jam-phobe, yes, jam-phobe. J-A-M-F-O-B.
You should find a clip of some generic black gal praising our radio show or criticizing the radio show.
Well, I woke up to go get me a cold pop, and then I thought somebody was barbecuing. I said, "Oh, Lord Jesus, it's a fire." Then I ran out. I didn't grab no shoes or nothing, Jesus. I ran for my life. And then the smoke got me. I got bronchitis. Ain't nobody got time for that.
My message to the country is this. We are a nation of immigrants, and America is an idea. Sure, there are a couple of burned cars and people are waving other countries' flags, but that's L.A. That's what L.A. is about. Dance like nobody's watching, love like you've never been hurt, and skateboard like your dad isn't in prison.
Cross the T's and dot the lowercase j.
There we go, Brad. That's a whole bunch of fun promos. You know that black woman from the viral 2012 clip, which was when it was last popular. She died of gallbladder cancer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was supposed to get a surgery, and then she told the story for the millionth time about how you can't tell the difference between outside scar tissue and inside scar tissue. And then some old bat texted her and said, "I had a bad experience. 15 years ago, I almost died. And then she used it as an excuse to not get surgery, and then she died.
Okay, John. It's time to move on.